Are you ready to unlock hidden savings within your organization's Microsoft 365 subscriptions? Introducing Tenant Detective, an application designed to analyze your Microsoft 365 usage data and uncover cost-saving opportunities without impacting your users. Picture this: your organization invests in Microsoft 365 subscriptions, but are you truly maximizing its value? With Tenant Detective's proprietary set of algorithms, you can now gain unprecedented insights into your Microsoft 365 usage. Imagine receiving a detailed usage analytics report tailored specifically to your organization. Discover how much you can save by eliminating unused licenses and rationalizing subscriptions for over-licensed users. With Tenant Detective, you can rest assured knowing that your organization's Microsoft 365 investment is being put to its best use. Say goodbye to overspending on licenses that sit idle and hello to a more cost-efficient future. Visit tenantdetective.plow.net today to start optimizing your subscriptions.
Hey, Cut the Shit listeners. You can find every episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Go check us out.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Cut the Shit, a podcast series that aims to take a closer look at the impact of the IT industry, both the good and the bad. Cut the Shit is brought to you by Plow Networks, a managed IT services company based just outside Nashville, Tennessee. I'm Bryan Link, COO here at Plow, and I'll be your host for this series. I'll ask questions, and with the help of our guests, try to dig deep on some of the key challenges we all face dealing with IT. So with that, let's cut the shit and get started.
Welcome, Cut the Shit listeners. This is Bryan Link, COO at Plow and your fearless host. Happy to be here with you today. I am solo, which I've done before, and as I've said before, is not always my favorite. It feels a little odd to do this by myself, but because I've kind of gotten used to interviewing folks. But here we are. I've got a couple things I want to talk about today that we'll get into more with some guests down the road, but did sort of want to set the stage a bit with sort of a monologue, if you will, on the topic. It's important for us at Plow, and it's important for the clients we have, and I know a lot of folks out there who are not our clients, because when you think about the market share of the Microsoft 365 platform, it encompasses almost everybody who's of any size, from tiny to gigantic. So I tipped it a little bit there. I'm going to talk about Microsoft 365. There's some interesting things going on with that platform. Microsoft has made some changes recently. And as I said, I mean, they've got over 80-something% market share. So while not everybody has it, there are some folks that use the Google Workplace Suite. It's not a large percentage of the market, and certainly not for clients above a certain size. It's just kind of baked in. It's not like having electricity at your house or at your office, but it's pretty close. Having said that, there's a lot of reasons to sort of dig in on that a bit and take a closer look at what your company is doing. And so today, what I want to try to do, this is not a commercial for our services. This is more, I want to talk a little bit about some of maybe the contours, if you will, of the way the solution works and a lot of things we take for granted, but that I feel like we probably ought to dive into a bit to give you some context if you want to take a closer look at what your company is doing with Microsoft 365, or if you think you already have, and you maybe something I say here will spark an interest or spark a question. Maybe we didn't think about that or turn that rock over. Then I'd consider this successful. This will be fairly short, probably 20 minutes or so. I don't want to ramble on. I want to get to the point, and hopefully you walk away with at least a better understanding of what's going on with that platform and how maybe you should take a look at. If you're a business person, maybe you should ask some questions of your IT team or your partner who provides your Microsoft 365 licensing. Or if you're the technology person in charge of managing it, hopefully this will give you some food for thought as you think about, are we doing the best we can to manage this platform to help our business get what they need from it without overspending? Because that's really what this comes down to. So with that, I'll start with the context, right? Or the reason this matters, right? Is so if you look at the cost of providing Microsoft 365 licensing to an employee, on average, you're looking at $25 to $30 an employee. If you're doing more than something very bare bones, right? So if you've got one of the core small business SKUs like Business Premium, or if you've got a Microsoft E3, you're well within that range, maybe more, depending on how you're buying it. And certainly if you're adding any other features, right? So you're talking $25 to $30 a month. We'll keep that as kind of our average. So, for a 200 person company with 200 users, you're $5,000-$6,000 a month, $60,000 to $70,000 a year. Okay, that's real money. That's not inexpensive. Now, granted, it's a platform everybody uses, right? We don't have any doubts about that. So it's not like you're wasting your money buying it. But the question is, are you getting the full value out of it? So that's the 200-person company. If you've got 500 employees, it doesn't really scale down much, right? The costs, you might be getting a discount from who you buy it from. Microsoft certainly doesn't give any discounts unless you're at the enterprise level. So, instead of, $5,000-$6,000 a month, you go to 500 employees, you're at $12,500 to $15,000 a month, right? So now you're at $150,000 to $180,000 a year. Again, this is real money we're talking about, and it's perpetual. It's not going away, right? You have to have these services. If you use email and you use Outlook or you use the web-based version, you have to have it, right? The same if you use Teams, or if you use installed Office, or if you use it for your phone system, right? Or for security features. There's a lot of things that the platform does well and really has made itself, invaluable. You cannot do without it. Hence the need for it to work all the time and that sort of thing, which we understand. But I want to talk more specifically about the economics of it, right? So you can see where we're talking about, right? 200 to 500 employees, we're talking $5,000-$6,000 a month, up to $12,000 to $15,000 a month. And if you start adding things on, so maybe you want to use it for Intune to do device management. Maybe you've got some security features you need to add on, like Defender for Explorer, or you need Intra ID P2 because you're doing risky login management. That's more. Now you're talking an additional $10 to $20 a user on top of the core services that you're buying if you don't do a good job of figuring out who doesn't need those, because it's easy to overbuy when you're adding on additional features. And then last but not least, their latest and greatest, the only thing Microsoft is talking about right now is Copilot. For good reason, right? It's a solid AI component. It really is a nice plug-in to Microsoft 365. It does some very nifty things. I'd argue most people don't know how to get a lot of value out of it yet. And at $30 a user a month, it's very expensive. So if you decided you were going to go all in and buy Copilot for everybody in your company, you double the cost of your Microsoft monthly/annual investment. So I would argue that's a lot of money to put down without a good plan. So we're not going to talk about AI today. That's for another time. But I'm giving you the economics, right? That's how valuable Microsoft thinks it is. They think it's worth twice what you're paying for all of the other feature combinations combined. If you think about a Microsoft E3, an E3 subscription or license, which costs $36 a month, Copilot is $30. And the E3 gives you just about everything they've got except for a few security features. So it gives you an idea of how much they think it's worth, or at least what people are willing to pay for it. So real money on the table, and more coming if you decide to go down the route of add-ons or AI. So I say all that to say that's a lot of money. We're talking about and for the foreseeable future, there's no end in sight to spending this money. It's evergreen, right? It's a subscription, so that could crowd out. It has a very real possibility of crowding out your ability to invest in other areas. If that cost continues to grow the way it has, right? You might need to invest in other areas in your business. Perhaps it's security. Perhaps you've got some legacy infrastructure you need to deal with. Perhaps you've got facilities or locations that need upgrades in various types of on-prem infrastructure, on-prem technology. All of those are competing for the same dollars, including your Microsoft 365 spend. So if that 365 spend continues to scale and grow the way it has the very real potential to put your business in a bad spot as far as being able to spend on other things. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today, because you might argue, or you might ask, well, can't we just figure out how to spend less, or how do we know? Can we easily make sure that our folks are using the features that we're giving them within these licenses, so that we don't buy too much? And the reality of that is no. It's really not very easy to figure that out at all. Microsoft provides that information to you, or makes it available. Let me be careful with the words. They don't provide it to you. They have what's called a Graph API that you can tap into, and you can pull all of your usage data on all of your users for all the time. So the raw material is there for you to figure out who's using what inside your Microsoft environment. And that doesn't mean it's easy to figure that out. And it doesn't necessarily easily line up with the subscriptions that you can buy, right? Microsoft has basically this core set, what we would call core subscriptions, the small business SKUs, business standard or business premium, and then the M365 and O365 series, F and E series, right? So those are bundles, right? If you want to think of it, those are combinations of features, sort of a one size fits all, or a buy one get everything you need idea for an office worker, or perhaps for a frontline worker, someone who doesn't necessarily maybe don't have their own computer, right? So that you get sort of two flavors that Microsoft has tried to provide with these bundled core subscriptions. The trick of it is, again, is not easy to figure out what's included in these, and some of them include some things, others don't include other things, and all that's fine. Figuring that out's probably easier than figuring out the usage side of the equation. But even if you have got that sorted, how do you know what your employees actually need when it comes to using the features of the Microsoft 365 platform? Because at the end of the day, right? If you're the business, if you're running a company and you're just trying to put tools in the hands of your employees, right? You really only want to give them the tools that they need to do their job, right? If you ran an auto shop and you had somebody putting tires back on a car, you would want to make sure that they had one of those pneumatic, lug nut things that can put the tire back on, right? But you wouldn't be concerned that they had a saw and that they had, a jackhammer, or, that they had any kind of other, all kinds of other tools that are really nice tools to have, but that they can't use. They don't need them to do their job, right? I would argue that same paradigm, that same lens is the way you should think about your Microsoft 365 environment and the tools that you put in the hands of your employees. Having said that, again, it's very hard to figure that out. First off, a brand new employee starts, today, I'm recording this on a Sunday, tomorrow's a Monday. If we had a new employee start tomorrow, I wouldn't know what his or her usage was going to be like until 30, 60, 90 days later, right? So for a brand new employee, I have to guess what their feature set, or what subscription that we should give them to give them the tools they need to do their job. Because back to the auto shop example I just gave you, it's just not that clear for, knowledge workers or technology workers, or service workers in the world that we're talking about. It's not that clear what tools they might actually need. And we'll get to that in just a little bit. Whereas, again, the person putting tires on a car, it's very discreet and very clear, right? I'll give you a simple example. If you're bringing someone into your accounting function, whether that's your accounts payable or your accounts receivable department, they're going to need Excel, right? That's like the putting tires on the car. That's clear. It's not always that clear, right? Some frontline workers, as an example, might need installed Office. Some don't. Some of your Office workers that you think would need installed Office would be just fine using the web versions. Some people use lots of email. Some people don't use much at all, right? Some people store a lot of documents. Some people don't, right? It's not necessarily tied to the job that they do. And that makes it very difficult to match licensing by job role, which at the end of the day is pretty much how everybody does it, because there really isn't any other way to do it without granular knowledge of usage, of your end users and kind of how they use the tools that you're giving them. But back to those combination subscriptions I was talking about. you get all this stuff. If you get an E3 or an E5, that's the Mac Daddy, if you will. If you get one of these core, one of these bundled subscriptions, you get a laundry list of features available to you, and all of those things are nice things to have, and lots of people use most of them, but most people don't use all of them. You would actually be shocked at what usage looks like across, even within job roles. Because you might think, well, all the people that are this kind of job need this subscription because they all do the same thing. Maybe, but not necessarily. They might do it in different ways. And really, these are the kinds of tools we're talking about are instrumental. They're not critical. You can do the job different ways with different tools when we're talking about this sort of technology enabled work. So, some need installed Office, some don't. Some want to use some will use installed Outlook, some won't. Some use Teams, some don't. Again, storage needs and email box sizes can vary greatly. You might have phone services offered through Microsoft. They've got a full voice program baked into the system, and you might be giving everybody a phone line. They might never use it. Right? They might be using their cell phone, right? They may just be going, and that number may not be getting used at all, and you're paying for that feature. And then, of course, all the security features I've already mentioned, things like, Defender. Are they using Microsoft Defender? That depends on if they have a computer, right? And it's getting installed. What about conditional access? Are you using conditional access policies for all of your employees or only for some, right? Or risky login or sign-in policies, some of the more advanced security features that are available inside Microsoft. You may only be using those for some of your employees, but you may have subscriptions that apply to a broader group of employees than who actually need it. So there's a lot of potential for overbuying with the way the subscriptions are set up. And I don't think Microsoft did that on purpose. I think they've put together bundles that they think are the most logical, kind of combinations of feature sets based on job roles. I don't think there's really any other way they can do it other than sell everything by, individual feature, which in general, that's too much trouble. Nobody wants to buy that way. So their bundles make total sense. It's also true that it leads to overbuying in almost every case. And I can tell you that based on the analysis that we have done using some tooling that we've built that looks at this usage, looks at the world through this usage-based lens. And we're seeing 20 to 30% overage in terms of usage, 20 to 30% of basically of features that aren't getting used, in terms of where they could, you actually could buy less, either smaller bundles or combinations of individual features and pay less and get the same feature usage, the same coverage of the features you're using today, with the overbought versions you've got. So I say all that to say, it's really something. I think with the amount of money that is already being spent, and if you look at if you're curious, go look at Microsoft's annual reports and look at how well the 365 platform is doing, right? And the growth rates, they're seeing 15, 20% growth rate, year-over-year growth rates. And they already have 80 to 85% of the market. So it's not like they're having a bunch of new people come on to, who are buying Microsoft 365 for the first time. That's year-over-year growth in costs from existing customers. Some of that was Microsoft raised their prices a couple years ago, which they hadn't done in a long time. So that obviously created a step up. But the next year had another 20% increase and prices didn't go up. So people are buying more than they were before to try to get at these feature sets that they need, particularly around security. And with Copilot and AI coming, that's another shoe waiting to drop. So you owe it to yourself to take a look at your tenant and see if you can sort out what your usage looks like relative to what you are buying. We offer a service. We can help people do that. We've built some software for that. There may be others out there doing the same thing if they are good for them. I'm not aware of any, frankly, that are doing that. There are some tools out there to help you manage your 365 environment, kind of some administrative tools like Enforcer and a couple of others that but that assumes that's not an analysis that's not trying to help you save money. That's trying to help you manage better and mostly help you be more compliant, because being out of compliance, either with your Microsoft customer agreement, which is very possible to do because you can buy features and apply them universally, even though the individual users aren't actually licensed for those services. Things like if you use conditional access across your environment for everybody needs to have at least an intra P1 license. They don't all, but the conditional access policies would still apply. But Microsoft would have the right to come back and tell you need to pay more if they found out you were doing that. So if any of you have ever, back in the day, if you ever went through a Microsoft audit for installed OS or Office suites, if you ever got one of those nice letters from their lawyers, you know what that's like. I haven't heard about them doing that on the 365 platform yet, but my sense is that probably is going to happen. So better to be prepared for that in advance. But that's kind of, that's important to think about, and that's a risk management thing. But in general, mostly people are buying more stuff because they want to. The platform does more for you than it used to. It's not just an email. It's not just a productivity and communication suite anymore, right? It's a full-fledged security and identity and access management platform, as well as a device management platform, all baked in, right? So they've really expanded the platform, and it is a fantastic platform. It does great work in these areas. So none of what I'm saying here implies that these tools are not good tools. But you shouldn't be buying things you don't use, right? That's the point that I want to make here, and I'm hoping that that's coming through. Again, we've kind of pushed our chips to the middle on this. We've built a service called TenantDetective. That's a software platform where we've built algorithms to do an analysis of our clients' tenants, and we look at their usage, and then we basically match that usage up against what subscriptions we think they need to cover that usage. That can be customized in ways. We've done some things to help constrain that, or do what if analysis if you wanted to add on Intune or Defender or things like that. So pretty slick. We're excited about it. We don't know of other people doing this out there. In fact, most of what we see is what I would call it's the other end of the spectrum. It's kind of the old school VAR sales model. So you're spending $5,000 a month. You've got 200 employees. The way people are trying to get your business today is to give you a 5% discount and see if they can't sell you some more on top, right? To make the overbuying problem worse, frankly, not better, by giving you a discount so that your unit price gets lower, right? So I'm buying more now at a little bit of a lower cost. So at the end of the day, it's less than what I was paying before, but it's more than what I was paying before because I bought more, but at least my unit price is down. We don't think unit price, you don't write checks for unit price. You write checks for total cost, right? And we're focused on total cost, and we strongly suggest you do the same. So if you're managing it internally, if you're the business person, go to your technology folks and ask them, hey, do we have any idea what our employees' usage looks like relative to what we're assigning them? The most likely answer is no, we don't, and we don't know how to do that, or that's too hard or too complicated, or we already do role-based assignments and that's going to have to do. And that's better than, role-based assignment is better than one-size-fits-all. Certainly true. Your healthcare environment, giving your frontline, nurses and those folks different SKUs than what you give your corporate folks makes sense. It's better than one size fits all, but it's not usage based. It's not optimized for sure. And again, we've seen a bunch of examples in those environments, even with role-based assignments, where people are still seeing 20 to 30% additional savings that they could harvest if they were to get tighter with their with matching their subscription buying to their usage. And so go back to close this out with the numbers. I mentioned at the beginning. A 200 person company is in the $5,000 to $6,000 range on the low end, maybe even closer to 8 to 10. So in that world, you're talking about a 20 to 30% savings of, $1,500 to $3,000 a month. 25 to $18,000 to $25,000, annually of basically freed up money that you could use for something else, either to drop to the bottom line or to use for investing in other areas in the business, whether that's technology or otherwise. And again, because these numbers don't scale down much, the bigger you are, trust me, the bigger the savings number is going to be, mainly because the environments are harder to manage and the pricing the cost curve just doesn't get bent as you get higher up. Unless you're in an EA environment, you've got 10,000 employees or something and you've purchased an enterprise agreement directly with Microsoft. That's a different scenario. We're talking about folks that are either buying it direct from Microsoft or buying it through a reseller, what would be called a cloud service provider like us. So you're talking about, $1,500 to $3,000 a month up to, maybe in the range of $5,000 to $6,000, $7,000 a month, and on up. That's we're only at 200 to 500 employees. You get to 1,000 or 2,000 employees, you're usually too small for an enterprise agreement. And you're in the $50,000 to $75,000 a month, maybe $100,000 a month in terms of your Microsoft spend. So the numbers add up quick, and they can be used, if you're intelligent about it, to be spent in other areas. And so that's what I'd like for you guys to think about. Again, this is the start of a conversation. We'll be talking about this more over the next few months. We have a couple of guests on to talk about some different dimensions of this. I may even try to pull in one of the admin platform companies out there and see if one of them would like to talk about what they're doing, because now that Microsoft is, now that M365 is a full-fledged security and identity and access management platform, standards compliance, whether that's complying with CIS or NIST, one of those security standards, is more and more important, especially if you're in a regulated industry like healthcare or finance or insurance or something like that. And so, it'd be interesting to talk to one of those companies, see if I can get somebody on the horn to talk with us about how they look at this problem and what they're trying to do for folks. So with that, I'll wrap it up. I hope you guys hope everybody's having a good summer. Stay cool. If you have any questions about your Microsoft 365 tenant, you want to reach out to us, send us an email at hello@plow.net. We'll put some information in the show notes about TenantDetective. You can go take a look at that if you want. Again, not a commercial, but at the same time, we think what we're doing is pretty interesting, and we would argue you should take a look at it, if nothing else, to challenge your own analysis and assumptions and make sure that you verify what you're doing. So with that, take care.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you are enjoying the podcast, we'd appreciate it if you would become a subscriber wherever you get your podcasts. And if you could rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, that would really help us out. Or you can just go old school and tell your friends, your family, your colleagues, and hell, anybody else who you think might want to hear something like this to listen in. If you're on social media, make sure to follow us on TikTok @CutTheShitPod, all one word, where we post lots of clips from the podcast. And last but not least, you can also watch the YouTube version of the show on our YouTube channel @Plow Networks. Until next time, take care and have a great day.